Well, welcome back to the Ex-Homeschoolers Club. I am your host, Jacob Gooden, and today is going to be a lot of fun. I'm chatting with my friend, Makeila. Most of you know her as Makeila Mahoney, but she's no longer Makeila Mahoney. You are now Makeila, am I going to say this right? Minshaw? No, nope, I didn't say
No,
that right at all. Makeila
it's
Harrell.
okay. Yeah, that's it.
My guest
Which
later
is
today,
funny.
I'm interviewing a second person later today. Their last
Yeah,
name is Minshaw. Um,
you're
yeah,
booked up. It's all
I'm
good.
booked up. Yeah, I'm very popular as we figured
Yes.
out. But Makeila, thank you for coming on the show. Welcome to the Ex
Yeah.
Homeschoolers Club.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. We're gonna have some fun. So we I know you and your sister were better friends with my sister. So I do know you.
Yep,
But I feel like I know you more from like later years for me.
it's true.
So,
Yes. And I think it is funny. I don't remember who you were interviewing that mentioned it, but like there definitely were different cliques. So I feel like I also know you from like the cool homeschooler side where like the swing dancers, like all of those. And I just wasn't part of that crew. So it's funny to see the other side.
well, you guys were in Oxnard, is that right?
We were.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's
Yeah.
also like the Oxnard, Ojai, Ventura. Like there was also there was a lot of
Yeah.
different things going on. I think everyone also looked at each other as like, well, that's the cool group over there. Like I would like to be a
Yes.
part of that group. But the reality was like we all were just we all were just weirdos, you know.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly. It was just like the cool kids were a little less weird than the other kids, and
True.
we were all just weird together, and it was great.
True. Okay, so I know tell the folks a little bit about like your homeschool journey. Like were you homeschooled all the way through? Also like how many siblings, like that kind of thing. Like set the stage a little bit of like family life and then homeschool life.
Yeah, yeah. So, our family life, we're a small little family. It was just me and my sister Madison. And then we actually adopted my brother, who's older than me by a year, way later. He came when he was 13. So, like junior high, high school age. But my sister and I were homeschooled all the way through. Our dad was a pastor at the time. And so his vacation days were really sporadic. And so they thought, hey, we should decide when our kids can go on vacation and we don't have to deal with asking permission from the school to let them go on a vacation in the middle of the school year. So that's kind of what they did. And my mom just jumped right in. She had a lot of mom friends in the community that had already been homeschooling their kids. So she had a good support system. So it was just me and my sister. And then when my brother was adopted, him and I ended up in all the same classes because he was held back a year. He's from Guatemala, so he didn't speak any English, which was kind of a funny dynamic. It definitely created a sibling rivalry because I felt like I needed to do better grade wise because he didn't even speak English. So
Right.
I should be able to do better. But it was fun because then I had a buddy to do all my schoolwork with. So
Yeah.
that was kind of what we did. And obviously, we did group solutions, which I think is what most people that have been on the podcast did. And then we did that and CASA. Were you familiar with CASA?
Yeah, that was like that was more like the Oxnard crew, right? Like
It
Casa was
was.
not Achieve, but it was similar to Achieve in that it was like a coalition of homeschool families and then they did different things together, right? Like graduation
Yeah.
and things like that, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it was mostly, like, Oxnard Camarillo folks, so a little
Okay.
bit more inland, and they did it interesting. They actually hired teachers, so the moms brought money together, and it wasn't just moms teaching classes, but we could sign up for, like I did economics, I did higher sciences, higher maths, and it was, like, actual teachers, which was helpful and I think less pressure for the moms, and they also did a lot of sports. That's why we did it because my brother wanted to do basketball and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, that is interesting because yeah, Achieve didn't really have much like that. I know there were people
Okay.
like Mrs. Yip has been brought up on this podcast a couple of
Yes.
times who taught a writing class, and then obviously some of the moms were educators and had gone to school to be educators, but yeah, there wasn't a lot of like actual like, oh, we hired somebody to teach a
Right.
class. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. And what were those classes like? Like more of a traditional classroom setting, or like what was like size wise and like things like that? What did that look like?
Yeah, it really differed on how popular that class was. I think if you remember from group solutions, I always remember this so vividly. The day where you had to sign up for classes, you wanted to be the first one in there so you could get your first picks for everything. Because there was like periods, there was like three
Right.
different sections of classes you could go get. So CASA was a little different in the fact that it wasn't like periods back to back. It really was you just go to the class that you would like. So I think it would range from like 8 to like 15 or 20 students in the classroom, and we met at a church. So similar to group solutions, it wasn't like we went to a school or anything, but
Right.
it was smaller classes. Yeah.
So you're saying also the classes were happy, like let's say on like a Tuesday or something like that, right? So you'd go to
Mhm.
one class on a Tuesday and then maybe a different class on a Friday or something like that?
Yep. Yep. That's
Okay.
exactly what it was. Yeah. You
Okay,
just
yeah.
sign up for the different time slots. Yeah.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah, because like group solutions was very much like all day. Three,
Mhm.
like you said,
Yes.
3 periods with a lunch break in there.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then like a worship session beforehand and yeah,
Yeah.
and then hangouts afterwards and stuff like that. But
It's true.
yeah, so kind of a different that might very much a different dynamic. Um
Yeah.
that's super super interesting. And did you I'm trying to remember. Did you say you were homeschooled all the way through, or at what point did your family switch to homeschool?
So we were all the way through, yeah.
Okay.
When I got to high school, my parents did give me the option. They said, "Hey, like if you want to go to regular school now, like you absolutely can." We were in a different stage of life, so it wasn't as important anymore for us to be homeschooled. But we lived right across the street from Oxnard High, and I saw all of the kids walking home from school every day, and I was like, "That's so scary." I don't know what I would do. I like have my group of friends. It's okay. Just the thought of being the new kid in a real school felt so intimidating, so I chose to stay homeschooled because I also liked that if I planned my day right, I could finish my school day whenever I wanted, really,
Mhm.
uh, and I felt like I was very much in charge of my own schedule in that way, so, yeah, I opted for homeschooling all the way through.
Yeah. I feel like this isn't true for everybody, but like I I went to public school for first kindergarten and first grade, and I
Yeah,
feel like I I would have wanted to stay in like a public school setting maybe in those earlier years, but by high school, yeah, like the ability to like dictate your own schedule and be done by a certain time and then go do something fun or have a job or like anything like that
mhm,
is like so interesting and different and unique, and I think it prepared me a lot more for like regular life, right? Because it
yes.
sounds like your parents also kind of gave you the freedom to be like, well, you're in charge of your day, kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's so true, and I think even thinking now, like, if I were to do something like homeschool for my own kids, I think I would do it like you said, like, have them in school for the first couple formative years, have them make friends, socialize, all that, and then in high school, let them choose, really. Not I don't think my parents did it the wrong way, I don't think there is a wrong way. Every family is different and every parent is different, but, um, I do think you're right, like, the high school, because even I'm really involved with some younger girls in my community, like, I just mentor them,
Mhm.
and the things that they deal with in school now is crazy, and I think it's just getting worse, like, bullying and mental health stuff, and
Yeah.
it's just wild out there, so it's different times for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but it it's also easier now than ever to like learn stuff. There's so
Yes,
much
that's true.
access to information, and so it's funny because I was chatting with someone who they're worried about like their grandson is potentially going to be
Mhm.
homeschooled, and they're like, I don't know, like I'm just they sent their kids to regular school, and then
Yeah.
and now their their son is like thinking about homeschooling his kids, and the grandma's just like she's worried, and I'm like there's so much information out there, and also like
Yes.
if it doesn't work then like they can always go to regular school or they can go to
Mm,
private school or they can do whatever. Like it can always be pivoted to change.
yeah,
But I was
absolutely.
like, look at me. I turned out semi normal.
Yes, I know. So it's funny that you say that. Someone didn't know I was homeschooled and was talking to like this group of people who was like, my wife wants to homeschool our kids, and I'm just scared that they're going to start making skirts out of our curtains. And I was like laughing to myself. I was like, I promise that's not everyone. So then I was like, I was
Yeah.
homeschooled. And he was like, you were? And
Yeah.
first of all, that's always a compliment when someone's like, I had no idea. But that's the same thing I told him. I was like, it's so different. Like, it all depends on, what your goal is with homeschooling. Are you trying to shield them from the world? Then maybe they'll make scrapes out of their curtains, but as long as they're socialized and you guys are doing a great job, it's fine.
Yeah. So that's hilarious. Because I know you weren't necessarily someone who made a skirt out of a curtain, but we definitely knew people who did that.
Yes. Yeah, there was a little bit of everything. Yeah,
There's
you got
yes,
to see different personalities, family personalities,
absolutely,
dynamics. Yeah.
absolutely. So, it, so being homeschooled all the way through, um, was there like, is there something you feel like your parents did really, really well, or like,
Mm,
or they could have done a little bit better? It sounds like your mom kind of asked for like joining something like CASA, right? Is
mm,
and sending your kids off to a class is like kind of helpful. Like my mom did that with areas where she was like, I'm not super strong in this area, right? So we need to
yeah.
help find somebody to help. So, you talked a little bit about that, but like, is there anything that as you've gotten older and you kind of look back, you go, Mom, you kind of missed this. Like this would have been
Mhm.
really helpful. And not to be
Yeah,
like, not to shame them. It's just mostly
of
to point
course.
out the fact that it's like, hey, like we can, for future generations, we can do better.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I think funny enough, later is when she realized when she signed us up for Casa, like, "Oh, I can't teach everything, like, I really
Mhm.
do need to send them off somewhere that will teach them more than I can." I think it was Lizzie Flagboom that talked about the Apologia books, and I feel like the one thing we did was switch around with curriculums a lot, which is fair because if
Yeah.
you start one and you don't really know, like, what you're getting into, and then it's, like, harder or easier than you think, then you're like, "Okay, like, we'll keep going," but I do think we swapped around a lot, which was a little bit hard. I kind of wish there was I think that's something that would be easier for families now. It's so much easier to research the
Yeah.
curriculums and really pick one that is probably trustworthy and a well-rounded, view, but CASA helped a lot, and I think something she did really well was set us up with, like, I don't know what you would call it. I guess, like, when they set up your grades to go apply for colleges or set up a resume, and so she really
Right.
did help us set up our, like, life goals, and she was the one that
Yeah.
encouraged me to just really kind of whatever you wanna do is great.
Yeah.
So she was very like, "You're in charge, like, we're just here to support you," which is really, really helpful. So it was a good balance. She was trying her best.
Yeah. No, that's cool too. That like, yeah, because my mom also was very particular about like, okay, we gotta like the goal was if he wants to go to college, he needs to be able to get into college, right? So one, he's got to be
Yeah,
smart enough to do that, but two, we got to have all the paperwork figured out so
right.
that when it gets to that point, it's easy to figure out. Share a little bit about like transitioning out of homeschooling and then into the real world because we were chatting a little bit before you didn't go to
Yeah,
college but you did
I
some
did.
other type of schooling, so
Yeah.
share a little bit about that transition and like why you decided that.
It was actually one of my class ed teachers. It was, my economics teacher, Mr. Wubu. He was great. He always wore oversized t-shirts, like button-up dress shirts that were 10 times too big for him. It was just a character trait. I loved it. He really instilled in me that college wasn't super necessary. If you
Okay.
wanted to do something, obviously, if you're gonna be a doctor or a scientist, please go to college.
Right.
But if you're not, he was like, "There's so many other avenues you can take," and he started giving me all those possibilities that I had never thought of before. Because I think it really is such a social standard to go from school to college, and if you don't have a degree, you're really looked down upon in the working world. So, he started, yeah, giving me those ideas. So, when I finished high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't wanna go get into a bunch of student loan debt just to figure that out. Um, my mom was the one that suggested, she said, "Hey, this is something you enjoy, which is like hospitality." We were the house that always had birthday parties, and I loved planning them for my friends. And so she found a certification program for event management, which is what I ended up doing. So it was perfect because right after high school, I got a job as a barista, and I was able to do that full time while I did online like schooling for event management, and it was really hands-on. It taught you everything from like how to read a contract, how to negotiate a deal, and how to lead your clients through this whole process. So I loved it. And so right when I finished that, it was about a year and a half. Um, they said 2 years, but again, I think homeschooling gave me the edge up because I was used to working independently and
Yeah.
figuring out my own schedule. So I finished it in a year and a half. And right after that, I became a wedding planner. One of my friends was a wedding planner at a venue, and a job opened up, and I had just finished my certification, and they said, "That's perfect." So I did that for a couple years, and I loved it. So from
That's
then
awesome.
on, I've just, yeah, the different event stuff. I've been
Yeah.
an event director for a nonprofit. I'm in
Mhm.
marketing now, but I still think it helps my event management knowledge. And
Yeah.
I think it really has helped me build on each step. And I think not having a college degree hasn't hurt me a ton because
Yeah.
I've been able to get experience from such a young age and build on that resume. So it turned out okay.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Because so I went to college for entertainment and specifically music, um,
Very cool.
but I wanted to manage bands. But part of
Yeah.
our program was we had a venue on campus and we would throw these events and we helped with, uh, if the board for the school came to town, who's picking up who at the airport.
Yeah.
Like we would do that kind of stuff and run
Logistics.
these
Yeah.
lunches and the logistics and all the behind the scenes stuff
Yeah.
that goes into all
Yeah.
these types of things. And so it was really cool that that whole arena of event planning is very interesting. And yeah, you don't need a college degree to be good at it. Um,
Right.
but it is really cool. What pro do you remember what the program was that you got your certificate through?
Yes. It was called the New York Institute of Art and Design.
Okay.
So they have a ton of different things
Yeah.
from event stuff, but they have like interior design or um, art specifically. So it's really more of a creative outlet, kind of a
Yeah.
website schooling thing. It was really
Yeah.
cool.
No, it's funny that you bring that up because I also looked at that when I was thinking about going to
Oh,
school because I was also
okay.
on the fence of like college, some kind of a
Yep.
certificate. I looked into a couple of those different programs and that kind of a thing. So that's funny. I'm very familiar with what you're talking about now.
That's very cool. Yeah. I usually people have no idea what I'm talking about. So it's
Yeah.
very cool that you know.
Yeah. No, and it helps too that like you said, you knew somebody who was an event planner for weddings,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
so then you kind of also have that leg up. And this is why I think it's so important to going back to like homeschool days, right? Is like
Right.
we grew up in environments that we were not just isolated to just our families. We had friends, we knew people, we also a lot of times also were encouraged to like know how to carry conversation with adults, right?
Totally.
And
Yeah.
so you learn how to kind of like be friendly and build this network very young.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but for me, that's what's carried my career for
Oh, yes.
what it is today.
100%. And I think what's funny is when I was younger and I was in groups and class and all that, I was such a shy kid, but even looking back, like it still did teach me all of those skills. I feel like I'm so extroverted now and I'm so comfortable talking to people and even some of my coworkers that are scared to like call someone on the phone, I'm like, "Oh, it's okay, I'll do it."
Yeah.
But I think it's because of that. I didn't realize how normal it was at such an early age for us. Even though I was shy, it really did set me up for success. Yeah,
So you're no longer in the event space. You now work in marketing. So talk
I
about
do.
that pivot too, because that's kind of a drastic pivot. And sometimes that can be
It
hard to
is.
get into if you don't have a degree, right?
It's true. I really do feel like I faked it till I made it here. I don't know how.
Yeah.
But so I was working as an event director at a nonprofit, which was great. I loved it. But just some things were changing and I was kind of getting burnt out. I was doing events most weekends and there's just a lot of travel involved. So I was like, I just need something different. So again, there was a connection that she used to work at the nonprofit I work for. She had connections with the CEO of the marketing company that I had heard of. So I just reached out to her and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for a career change. Like, if there's anything opening or if you know of anything, I would love it."
Yeah.
So she was like, "Oh, yeah, you'd be great. You just need to be organized. That's the key thing." Everyone's like, "Oh, you're organized. You can keep a to do list and get things done. Great, but you're hired."
Yeah.
So, she gave me a recommendation, which was so kind of her, and I initially interviewed for a project management role, which didn't end up working out, and then they were like, "But actually there's another role, it's an account executive." So they're the people who work directly with the clients, but they needed someone to support those account executives. So basically, I run the logistics for these account executives. They have so much on their plate, and
Right.
they have to keep track of different projects and deadlines and sending things to clients, and essentially, it's what I was doing for events, just for
Yeah.
venues and different clients, and so I just transferred my skills over, and now I have learned so much about marketing, and I didn't realize how much, like, networking and knowing your client, that's a huge thing. Like, for marketing, you need to know what does your client want the audience to know and what do you want them to be like, "Oh, I do need that service. I'm gonna go to that company." So, it's been really fun to just get to know this different aspect, and, uh, I feel like it's just something else I get to add to my resume. I can't stay in one place for very long. I think that's the other thing. I just love learning new things and
Yeah.
going to the next thing, so it's been fun.
Marketing and the internet and like social media
Mhm.
management and like all these types of things and client management. It's such a I I say black hole in a good way, right? Because there are
Yeah.
so many different paths that you can go down as you go further and further into it, right?
Mhm.
And oh man, it's like so wonderful because like
Yeah.
I've shared this story before on on the show, but like I worked at a restaurant. I hated my life. It was just awful. I managed a restaurant and like it was a fine job. It was good. But I was like, I need out of this. I want to do
Yeah.
marketing. I want to work. I want to be creative. Right. And so I
Yes.
started doing an internship that was like, or I started taking these online classes that were these marketing classes and like learning how to use,
That's awesome.
a website builder and learning how to post on Instagram effectively and like
Yeah.
all these different things. And part of the program was you could do a 3-month internship. And I was like, okay, I mean, I'm not going to get
Mhm.
paid, but it's 10 hours a week. Let me just do it. And it hooked me up with a
Yeah.
podcast. And I was like, okay, so I'm the marketing guy for this podcast now.
Cool.
Interesting. And then because I had some experience with audio stuff, and then I ended up editing a show for them, and then it then spiraled down into like then I was producing
Yeah.
for them, and then I was doing video for them, and like, all of these things. Like you said, if you have kind of the baseline understanding of like
Yes.
know how to be organized, know how to like learn, that's another key thing. Is like we both had experiences where we knew how to like structure our day and we knew how to like teach ourselves, right? And find the
Yeah.
information. And so if you
Mhm.
can do that, well, you can do anything you want in the world because there's like there's no
It's so
lack of
true.
information at this point on the internet,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Everything I know about video editing, about starting this podcast, all that kind of stuff is like just shit I've picked up along the way to figure it
100%.
out, right? I didn't get a degree in this. It's
Yeah.
like, you know,
Which is so cool, and I feel like that's the other thing. Do you feel like group solutions specifically, I feel like that was more of my creative outlet. They had so many electives you could take that really helped us explore, like, those different creative things that we could be good at. So, like, there was a guitar class, there was a cake decorating class, and I'm like, "Oh, this is fun," and I feel like do you feel like it set you up to be like, "Oh, yeah, I can try different things," like
I think to some degree, yes.
Mhm.
I think what did more of that for me was I I took guitar lessons from Tim Franz.
Yes,
Two of his daughters have
love
been on the show so far, Carrie and
yes,
Elia.
love it.
You know them very well.
We do, yes.
And Katrin's coming on very soon, so
Oh, yay!
which will be
You'll
fun.
complete the trifecta of the Franz
Exactly,
girls.
exactly. I'm collecting my infinity stones.
Yes,
But
that's so funny.
but yeah, their dad was my guitar teacher, and so like, and then I worked for him for a couple of years, and
Very
like
cool.
learned so much that way, and then also like being in bands and being around people who just were creative, right? So
Yeah,
I don't know that Group Solutions itself was like that outlet as much for me. I took a lot more, I feel like, regular classes in Group
mm,
Solutions, like English
okay,
class and science class and things like that. That's not to say I also took fun classes. I remember taking
of
games
course.
class, and I remember
Yeah.
I have an interview with John Slagboom coming up, and we're going to talk about. I took his like it was
Oh,
basically Boy
cool.
Scouts class,
Yes, I remember
type
that.
of
I
thing.
took the girl version with Mrs. Blackboom.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so I think I'm glad that it was that creative outlet for you, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know that it was for me, but
No, that's
still.
interesting, and I feel like even that, like, it's such a different experience for each
Yeah.
person. And maybe it's because I got that more structured set of classes at CASA that I felt
Yeah.
like I could just do more fun things like group solutions, but yeah, I do think it's cool. I think a lot of homeschool kids are very entrepreneurial,
Oh,
just
yeah.
because they can, you know?
Yeah. No, did you at any point in, I don't know, junior high, high school, like, have kind of, like, your own business?
A little bit. I mean, I would teach piano classes. I've taken piano for, like, my whole life. So, I
Right.
did piano lessons, and that was kind of my own company, and, my sister and I were always coming up with different ideas to, like, sell or make on
Yeah.
Etsy. So, yes, I guess you're right, we did.
Yeah. No, I was in that same place where when I looked back and I was like, "Oh, I did this." Like, I baked cookies for
Yeah,
this and, like, and sold them
right.
and then or, like, did guitar lessons or whatever. I was like, "Oh my gosh," like, no, I've been, like, an entrepreneur for a very long time.
Right.
And I didn't realize that until semi recently. I was, like, having a conversation with my dad, and he's like, "No, like, you've been this thing for
Yeah.
forever."
Right. Yes, and it's because we had the time too. Like, we
Yeah,
could do it in between our schoolwork or whatever. So, yeah, it came easy, but it was fun.
yeah. Do you think that, like, I'm trying to figure out how to pivot this a little bit into, like, homeschooling, obviously there's a lot of, I feel like we had some shared experience of just the fact that, like, we had
Mhm.
parents who cared very much about, like, getting us to the end goal, not just the end goal
Mhm.
being high school, but the end goal being you're going to build some kind of career,
Life.
you're going to build some
Yes.
kind of life after that, right?
Yep.
And so they put us in environments where we were able to be social, we were able to learn about the things we're interested in. But there's still also, like, a lot of, like, mental things that go on in the
Mm.
homeschool world that is not like,
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's not traditional school. It's different.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own mental health battles, and things like
Of
that.
course. Yeah.
But do you feel like, because I know for me, I grew up with this understanding that I felt like the odd man out always, even within the
Mhm.
homeschool community. I had friends, I had new people, but I just knew that as a homeschooler, we were the odd man out. We were just different,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
so, like, it's taken a long time to get to that point now where it's like I am who I am, and people can either accept or deny that. That's just what
Yep.
it is.
Yes, and I totally yes, I agree. I had the same experience and thought. I think that's part of why I was so painfully shy as a child, because you do feel like that outsider, and it's a little bit harder because you go to places like Group Solutions, but even then there's cliques. So on top of being homeschooled and feeling like an outsider, there's still like friend groups that you feel like you're on the outside of, and you don't see them as often. So it's harder to get past those boundaries. Whereas I think kids in normal school learn that so much quicker. They're like, oh, I see these kids every day. It doesn't matter what they think. Or, I mean, I'm sure there's still hard parts, but in my mind, I feel like that would be such a different experience. But now in my adult life, looking back, I do think like I am so much more outgoing because I've gotten past that. And because I think my parents have gotten past some of that too. I think they have some past, like, from their parents' trauma, like generational stuff where they
Right,
tried to keep that on with, like, so many things. Religion, it could be, like, how they went about, like, making rules in their house and, like, transitioning from being, like, a kid who needs to live by their rules to, like, an adult to, like, "I can now disagree with you," and having those conversations, which is always such a hard transition. I feel like there is a point where you start almost parenting your parents through things where you're like, "No, let me tell you what I learned." Like, it's
yeah,
okay to not know something, or it's okay to, like, be scared of this thing, but let me tell you why you might be scared of this thing. I feel like I've dived so much into, like, mm, Enneagram stuff. Are you familiar with Enneagrams?
yeah. Refresh my memory just a little bit, but yes, I
Yeah.
do know what it is.
So, it's kinda some people love them, some people hate them, but it's basically just 9 numbers that break down personality types, and it's
Hmm.
basically, like, the core of who these people are, so what they're motivated by. So, for example, I'm an Enneagram 9 and it's peacemaker. So all I want is for everyone to get along all the time, and I will do anything to make that happen.
Yeah, I relate to
um,
that.
okay, yeah, but my sister, for example, is an 8, so she's the opposite. They are all about, like, confrontation, and they're not afraid of it, and they have opinions on everything.
Yeah,
So, it's been cool to, like, dive into something like that where I think
right.
when I was younger and under my parents, where we were in a church that was pretty, conservative, that wouldn't have agreed with any of that. Like, um, they were very much like, if there's something wrong in your life or you're depressed or have any kind of mental issue, it's definitely sin. And it's like, okay, no, there's so many other reasons that
Yeah,
someone could be struggling with something. Like there's imbalances in brain chemicals and like
right,
all of these things. So, it's been fun to be on the other side now to explore all of that and teach my parents that and see
right.
them come out of things that they have been trapped in. They're like, "Oh, I don't have to think that way," or "This is why I think that way." So, I don't know, that's just been really cool. And I think because we have such a good relationship, they've been open to it, so I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's been cool.
No, that's interesting. You brought up the sin thing, which I think is interesting because
Yeah.
there are certain things, like, and we're all on our own journeys, but I've done these unpacking in the last couple years of the fact that, like, yeah, there was, within Christianity, for anyone who's listening who's not familiar with Christianity, there's a
Mhm.
whole spectrum of beliefs of, like, the severity of the Bible, right? Like, the how
Mhm.
literal you take it and all these different things, right? And then there's also kind of this politicized version of church as well, where there's like the rule creators that are like, where did this rule come from? We don't even know at this
Mm.
point, because like it's not even biblical. It's just built into the fabric of that church, right? Or that particular, you know, Calvary chapels are different than Southern Baptists, and Southern Baptists are
Yeah.
different than non-denominational, and et cetera, right?
So much.
Um,
Yes.
so when you said that stuff about, okay, so you have this mental health block, right? Of like maybe it's depression or something like that, right? And that
Mhm.
being it's caused by sin.
Yes.
What like
What?
what do you do with
Yeah.
that? Because like the whole premise of Christianity, right? Is like you accept Jesus into your heart, he pays the ultimate price, he washes your sins away, right? And then you
Yeah.
continue to do repentance throughout the years, because as humans we just naturally mess up and make mistakes and
Yep.
sin.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, why doesn't that go away if
Yeah.
I'm praying about it and I'm asking for forgiveness? Why doesn't that depression go away, or why doesn't whatever that thing is? So that's really interesting, and I would love to
Yeah.
hear kind of more about unpacking that with your parents, because I think learning to have tough conversations with your parents is like
Me.
very freeing. My family's done the
Yeah.
same thing. So
Yeah.
if you're comfortable, share a little bit more about that,
Yeah.
because it's
Sure.
fascinating.
So it was kind of a wild journey. And I think the turning point didn't even happen until about 4 years ago because we were at a church in Los Angeles. It was a pretty big church, and my dad was a big pastor at this big church. And so it was very much like you had to be viewed as perfect, you and your
Yeah.
family. So we always lived with that pressure, not only being pastors' kids, but pastors' kids at a mega church where everyone watched our every move.
Yeah.
And in that whole thing, I mean, so much drama and political stuff happened within churches and leadership, it's wild. So, something major happened, and, like, a bunch of rumors came out about my dad, and everything just kinda, like, hit the wall, everything spiraled out of control, and that was the point where we were like, "Wow, this is crazy," because these are people who are holding us to, like, a ridiculous standard, who are not happy that things are not going their way, and they're willing to do crazy things for this. So,
Yeah.
we decided to leave that church, and that was the first time that, like, I had seen my dad, like, really stressed about something and, like, really struggling through this, and so I think leaving that church was just a huge plus that opened up a lot of doors, and then also seeing him be just, like, human, not viewed as perfect, and, like, he's like, "I'm not perfect, like, this is just not what it is," and, like, we decided to move to Florida to be closer to family, and we just went to church. We weren't involved in anything, he wasn't the pastor of anything, and I think that transition really helped us open up as a family to be like, "Okay, that was wild, right? We never wanna go back." Okay, cool.
Right.
So what do each of us think? What was our thought? So, I mean, each of us had a different perspective. Like, I think I was more mad at the church for a really long time because I was like, "This is ridiculous." Like,
Mhm.
everyone is, put on that pedestal. Everyone expects you to live that way, and I just really hated that. So, other my sister was like, "No, just these specific people were the bad guy, not the church," and all that. So, coming to the other side and going to not so much of a conservative church, here in Florida helped a lot because I think there needs to be a balance, and that's kind of what we ended up saying. Like, you need mental health, you need therapy, you need psychiatrists, and everything to support you through this journey that is life. And we
Right.
do live in a sinful world, so we can't get away from that. But like, if you have a balanced view and you're not just like legalistic about everything, then you're good. So that whole journey, sorry, that was a long way to say.
No,
That was
that
how
was great.
okay, it's that's really what changed the dynamic between us and our parents, I think, because then we were always scared to open up and bring things up with them because not that we were afraid that they would judge us. Our parents were very loving, and I think we always had a good relationship with them, but it was that outward pressure of, I don't want you to have the worry of like, oh, these people might see my kids as perfect, or like, just the stereotypical like church family. Like,
Yeah.
so I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like
No,
that
it
was
does.
the,
It does.
yeah,
So for a little bit of my dad was not a pastor, but my dad grew up in a house with somebody who was a teacher.
yeah,
I don't know if he was necessarily a pastor, but he taught theology, you know,
okay,
that kind of stuff.
yeah.
And my dad always talks about, and this was lived out in my life too, was like on the way to church, everyone's screaming at each other in the car. They're all pissed
Yeah.
off. Everybody's angry. You get out of the car at church. The happy smiles go on. You walk in the doors and everything's okay, right? You just push it all
Yeah.
down. You set it
Yep.
aside. And then you're thinking maybe later we're going to deal with this, right? We're going to talk about it. We're going
Right.
to whatever. And then you just never do, right? You just go about the rest of your
Yeah.
life. And it's like, and that was kind of what I grew up with too, was kind of that similar mentality because that was what my dad had grown up doing and my
Yeah.
mom to some degree. And so that's what they just did to us because it was like, well, that's what we know, right? That's the
Right.
solution. And then
Yeah.
it starts to manifest itself in these really nasty ways, right? And then when it
Yes.
comes out, you're like, oh my God, this is disgusting,
Yeah.
right?
And
It
it's
comes out in
true.
like cancer, it comes out in sickness, it comes out in like,
It
crazy like weight loss stuff. It's, like really unhealthy, mental health struggles and physical health struggles as well.
yeah.
To be a pastor's kid too, there's just that
Mhm.
added level of like, all eyes are on me, you know?
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't even, like, sit next to a boy at church because then everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, is that your boyfriend? Like, what do you do?" So it was funny. I laugh at it now. I think at the time it was probably traumatic, but
Yeah.
it's just so funny. But
Yeah.
yeah, and I think you're right, like, I think that's such a big thing because you look up to your parents for so long,
Right.
and then once you realize that they also struggle with things, you're like, "Oh, we can relate to each other. Like, this
Yeah.
is cool. Like, we get to talk about this now." So
Yeah.
that's helpful.
Yeah. So, do you feel like you kind of maybe like I don't want to say healed from it faster than your like family did, but obviously you were talking about like then learning to like kind of parent your parent um
Mhm.
in a way. So, is it one of those things where you feel like, "Oh, I kind of got to this understanding of like whether it's the therapy or just reading and gaining
Yeah.
knowledge, right? Where you're like, okay, I'm at this place where I'm happier and I'm starting to understand like taking certain things with, I need a therapist or I need,
Yeah.
some kind of drug or whatever, to help with depression, whatever it is. But like that then you were able to like flip around and be like, okay, mom, dad, like w-
Your
you might
turn.
also benefit from this kind of a thing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I do feel like even when we were at that church in LA, I was super interested in psychology. I thought it was so fascinating, just the study of how the brain works and people's psychology. So that's what I originally wanted to go to school for.
Mhm.
But my parents were like, "No, our church doesn't believe in that. I don't think you should," like, all that kind of thing. So, I was already exploring all of that side of things on my own,
Okay.
reading books, that kind of stuff. So, I think that did help prepare me for the aftermath of, like, okay, I kind of know how people's brains work, and I
Yeah.
just need to know what trauma you guys are reacting this way because of, if that makes sense. So I think my sister went to therapy pretty quickly after that, for the first time, because if it wasn't biblical counseling, then you couldn't go, but obviously that's not always the answer. So she did
Yeah.
therapy. I was already familiar with a lot of that kind of stuff. So I do think that helped in the transition, but I think it was definitely our whole family at the same time being like, okay, we just need to try something new, break out of this super conservative, legalistic lifestyle. So
Yeah.
yes and no. I think it was all of us at the same time, but I think my
Okay.
sister and I had a little leg up. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. From personal experience and then also
Yeah.
from doing a lot of research, anytime somebody is trying to deny you access to information, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
like you said, your church was saying psychology not really real, not really relevant, whatever. I grew up
Yeah.
in an area where there was a lot of witches, you know,
Yeah.
kind of
Oh,
interested in
hi.
the
Love
occult,
it.
whatever. When someone's
Yeah.
telling you, "No, don't go down that path." It's usually not coming from a place of like it it's coming from a place of control
Yeah.
because typically um be and wanting to deny and fear because they're wanting to deny you
Mhm.
access to that information because they fear that once you have access to that information you will continue to make more choices for yourself and choices that will lead you away from what they believe, right? And so Christianity is very, very, very used to doing this over and over
Yeah.
and over again. Like you said, also like receiving counseling at a church. Typically, those people are not trained therapists.
No, no,
You
they're
know,
not.
they are armed
Yeah.
with the Bible, and that is about it. And not everything in the Bible is bad, but it's just the, sometimes you just gotta learn how to do other things, right? It's like your
Yes.
brain works
Yeah.
other ways.
It's true, and I
So
think that's the other thing, like, I mean, I still go to a church and I would still consider myself a Christian, but
mhm,
it's very much different from what I grew up with
yeah,
because I think there is that balance, like, uh, we believe what the Bible says, but also, like, we believe that the Lord gave us all of these resources for a reason. Like, why are we trying to, like, limit people and control people? And, like,
right,
that's not the way He would want anyone to live. So,
yeah,
yeah, I think it's very fascinating, and everyone's journey down all of that is so fascinating to me.
yeah. Man, that's a lot to unpack, but
That is a lot.
I'm glad I'm
Uh,
glad you've kinda come out the other side of it, and obviously, I'm sure there are things that there's just things that we will always continue to deal with as we go through life, but I'm glad to hear
yeah.
that you're kind of out of it, out of the worst of it
Yes.
sounds like.
Yes, yes, we made it to the other side, we're good, and now I feel like it's fun to be able to help other people who might be going through that. I think church hurt is just such a real thing, and so
Yeah.
being able to be a resource for people who've gone through that is, yeah, super important to me because it's a lot.
Yeah. No, it is. It is. Well, and it's cool too that your dad, somebody who was a prominent figure inside of
Um,
a big church, is able
mhm,
to also like hopefully help people and share his story and share,
yeah,
and heal from his own past stuff is also very, very important. And
yeah, 100%.
I tell people this all the time. I'm like, it's never too late to go get some help. It's never too late, you know.
It's true.
And you alluded this as well, but like, you know, families that could then like talk about the stuff that
Mhm,
happened behind closed doors. Like, I feel still so close to my parents,
yeah,
and we have gone through stuff, right? There has needed to be
yeah,
apologies, there's needed to be relearnings, and we don't agree on everything, but we're still like they're still my folks. I still love them. I still want to go
of
see them. They
course.
still come visit me. Like, there's no cutting off.
Yeah,
But it's because they were also open to the fact that to have conversation and to heal and learn and be good people, basically.
yeah, yeah, that's the key, and also I feel like I'm so excited about, like, our generation, and you mentioned this, like, on your last podcast that you are not sure if you and your wife want kids, and my me and my husband are also not sure we want kids, but thinking about this generation, I feel like we've come such a long way with all of our mental health and conversations and, like, all of that kinda stuff, and just creating our opinions that I think are so much healthier than the past couple generations that I'm just excited to see what happens. I think it'll be really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I think whether you want kids, whether you don't want kids, it's
Yeah,
up in the air, whatever. It like
yeah,
you can still be involved in people's lives in a
mhm,
meaningful and helpful way, right? And
yeah,
th- I've had so many people throughout the years now who have come to me and been, or have come to my parents and then they've pointed them to me of just like, hey, like this kid is struggling with X or they want to go into what, and
yeah.
and we can just have conversations. I met a homeschool family. I live in Tennessee now. I met a homeschool family here, and we were just like, I was yucking it up with them about the fact that I was like, it gets better, right? Like you can make
Yeah,
friends and like,
it's
all these things. And like we were just joking about it. But, but also encouraging them that it's like, if you want to go to college, like, yeah, we can make that happen. It's easy,
yeah,
that
I
kind of
know,
thing.
yeah, it's so true.
And so, yeah. So I say that to say, even if you don't have kids, you can still impact the next generation of
Oh,
people. Just,
100%. You're gonna
you
be
know,
bosses, you're gonna work in workplaces, and
exactly.
yeah, make
Yeah.
a difference. Yeah, that's
So,
very cool.
okay. Very cool. No, this has been a great conversation, Michaela, because I
Yeah.
I wasn't sure where we were gonna go with this.
Yeah,
We kind of
it's true.
flying by the seat of our pants, but I love it. I love where this conversation has gone, and no, and I just want to say thank you for coming on because and reaching out and saying what's up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that's what I when he says email, like, you can email him, you can message him, like, do it. That's what I did. I just reached out, DM'd you, and I was like, "Yeah, it's so great. Like, it's so fun to hear everybody, and it's just fun to catch up with people, so do it."
Yes. Yes. Yeah. No, and reach out to each other too. If you see somebody
Yeah.
on here and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I haven't seen them in forever." Like, shoot them a DM, film a quick video and send it over on Instagram or text them or
Yeah.
whatever. Do what you got to do to get reconnected with these folks because a lot of it, we're very different people now,
Mhm.
and I think reconnecting with our friends from the past, and I'm making better friends with people that I never thought I would ever be friends with again. um
Yeah.
People I never even like gave a second thought to after I was out. I was like, oh, okay, I never have to see them
Yeah.
again, okay, whatever. um they're coming back into my lives, and I'm realizing that there's so many people out there that are just like amazing people. And so
Yeah.
again, like you
And
said.
yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say making friends as adults is hard, but like we have this entire group of people who shared our experiences. So it's definitely
Yes.
worth like making friends with them again.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and like Michaela said, uh, if you want to reach out to me, absolutely, please do that. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Threads at EXHS Club, or you can email me at EXHSClub@gmail.com. Yeah, just shoot me a message, say what's up, and we can chat. Even if it's not on recording, we'll chat. We'll hang out.
Mhm.
Um, Michaela, this has been great. Is there anything we missed or that has come to your mind of a cringy homeschool moment that you're like, you got to leave the people with?
That's so funny. I don't know about a cringy homeschool moment, but I do have this vivid memory that I want to know if you remember also.
Okay.
Um, so we had a friend. His name is Ryan Reynolds, not the actor, but just Ryan Reynolds.
Well, he was an actor, but he was
He
not
was
the
an
Ryan
actor.
Reynolds.
Yes, not the Ryan Reynolds. But I just remember that one year for his birthday, he wanted to no, we were throwing him a surprise party. His mom put this whole thing together. And so there was probably like what, 25 of us at his house waiting for him. Do you remember
I
this?
think I think so. I think I know where you're going, and I'm trying not to kill the punchline on this one. But
Okay,
yes,
yeah.
I think I know
So
where
we're
you're
all
going.
waiting at his house. We got there early. It's like 6:30 and everyone is so excited because Ryan was a jokester. So like the
Yeah.
fact that we could pull a fast one on him was like, yes, we're doing something great here.
Yes.
So his brother, who's supposed to pick him up, walks in the front door and is like, "Hey," and then his mom was like, "Where's Ryan?" And Steven's like, "I thought you were gonna get him." And she's like, "No, that was your job." And so everyone's like, "Oh no, the party's ruined." And then out pops Ryan from a closet
Yep.
in the front room. We're all hiding. He's like, "Surprise." He's like, "I took this all together. It's a surprise on you guys." And you had the best reaction. You were like, "Are you kidding me?" And you like walked out and you pretended to just leave the party. And I always thought that was so funny.
I do remember that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, I always refer to
Yeah.
that was the party that Ryan came out of the closet. Um
Yes. Yes. That was the joke.
and yeah, and I would tell people that. What's even funnier about that party was that when I got there, I was wearing a coat because it was like, which, like, I mean, you live in SoCal, like, you don't need to wear a coat, but like what,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
6 days out of the year. Um,
Right.
anyway, I was wearing a coat. I walked in, I took my jacket off, and I was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna like put it in this closet right here." And
Yeah.
then and then I don't know why. I don't know if someone distracted me or what, but I like ended up not putting it in the closet. And I'm
Oh,
so glad I didn't
funny.
because that's where he was. And I
Ryan
told
was
him that, and
like,
he's like, "I would have just grabbed you and pulled you in the closet, and you would just had to be in here with me." And I was like,
oh
that
my
would have made it
gosh.
even one more step funny of like Jacob and Ryan came
Yeah.
out of the closet together.
That would have been
But yeah,
hilarious. Wow. That just added to the whole night. I didn't even know that. That's so funny.
yeah. No, but love Ryan. Ryan, if you're listening to this, reach out,
Yes.
dude. Like, come on the show. Let's chat because I know you're doing big things now. So,
Definitely.
yeah, Michaela, this has been awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
again for reaching out and coming on and sharing your story. And the door is always open. If you ever want to come back, you're more than welcome to.
Thank you.
And people, reach out to Michaela. Say hi. Tell her what's up.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
yeah. All right. This has been the Ex-Homeschoolers Club. I said it before. I'll say it again. Reach out to me, leave a like, leave a subscribe, do all of the things you need to do on whatever platform you're listening on. And you know what? I'm going to do one more call to action. Also, if you enjoyed this episode or if you enjoyed any of the episodes, send it to a friend. Please do it. Share it around, if not for me, for yourself. Okay. Peace. We'll see you next week. All right.